I have a very important question to ask you. Have you checked out the Generally Spooky Patreon yet? Because if not, why not? We've got oodles of content over there, exclusive episodes only available on Patreon, our Wee Blethers, the chatty, unscripted weekly show where Kieran and I discuss episodes, what's going on with us, and generally have a great time. There's also the Spooky Book Club, where you'll get a chapter a week of a spooky classic. At the moment, we're in the middle of The Turn of the Screw by Henry James, and I am dying to know how it ends. As well as all that goodness, joining our Patreon is really what keeps the podcast going. It allows us to keep doing what we love, which is chatting to all of you about spooky Scottish history. You're £75 a month. No, I'm just kidding. You can pay £4, £8 or £12 a month to keep the lights on and keep the creepy cogs turning. So come join in. Search Generally Spooky Patreon or click on the link in our description. We recently partnered with the Spark Company here at the podcast, who are a clothing brand who know what's up. They're a community for anyone who believes in the radical notion that everyone should be treated equally. And we can definitely get behind that here at Generally Spooky HQ. And we know that you will too, since our listeners are the best. We've treated ourselves to some excellent pieces. Kieran is already jealous of my Fight Like a Girl sweatshirt, but he isn't getting it. And if you use our link to treat yourself to something just as awesome, it's yet another way to support us here on the podcast. The quality is great, the message is great, and if you use the discount code SPOOKYSPARK5 and the link below, you'll get 5% off your first order. Thank you so much, Spark Company. You guys are awesome, and thank you so much for supporting our rambling. We have some very exciting news. We've partnered with the National Trust for Scotland. Joining the Trust with one of their memberships helps to preserve and protect the many amazing, historical and significant sites across Scotland for future generations. Your membership gets you free access to all 500 National Trust locations across the country, as well as free parking. And who doesn't love free parking? A National Trust for Scotland membership is ideal for days out with the family or for saving money on that tour across Scotland that you're taking for your holidays to see all the generally spooky sites, like Culloden Battlefield, Culzean Castle and Glencoe National Nature Reserve. Use the link in our description to get your Trust membership, and you'll be preserving Scotland's history as well as supporting us here at the podcast. Thank you, and happy travels!
Hello everybody, welcome to the Generally Spooky podcast.
That's us.
Everybody's favourite spooky and Scottish history podcast.
Literally everyone's. Ask them. Ask them what their favourite Scottish spooky history podcast is. And it will definitely be ours.
If they can name one, it's probably ours.
Yep. Do you know, I was seeing on Instagram, I was speaking to the Haunted UK podcast. Mm-hmm. Amazing. Definitely give them a listen. It looks like they got a review that could have been meant for us instead of them.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
How so?
Yeah, the review that was left for the lovely Steve talks about co-hosts, and Steve hosts the Haunted UK podcast by himself. The review says, no phones during the presentation, please, Kieran.
Oh my god.
I don't think I've ever gotten to say that to you. Yeah, the review is really nice. It's 5 stars, great podcast, from Spooked of Northumberland. So pleased I found this podcast as I'm loving listening to the spooky stories from around Scotland. Really well researched and delivered, and I love the crack between the hosts.
That does sound like our podcast.
There could be several others. We're not the only ones doing this.
No.
But Steve wondered if it was us, and I thought it was quite funny.
That is quite funny. Reading that review, I was like, oh, that's nice. It's not about my podcast, but it's very nice.
So see, that's why we're everyone's favourite. They're talking about us even not on our platforms, talking about us everywhere.
We are universal. Well, that alarm was because I was doing a COVID test, but I don't have COVID, I just have man flu. What are you going to do about it?
We're sick.
I almost wish it was COVID. Nope, just plain old man flu.
Yeah. But it's been miserable.
Yeah. But fortunately, we did our spooky field trip before we got sick.
Yes, for this week's episode, we went on location And we even took the dog.
Yep.
Even the dog came on location for this one.
The three of us hopped in the mystery machine and we headed out.
Yeah, Kieran would quite like to start calling our car the mystery machine.
I think it's fitting as we take it to these spooky locations.
I'm not against it.
Yeah,
I
right.
loved Spooky Doo. Spooky Doo?
Yeah, good old Spooky Doo.
Spooky Doo. I wonder, is that Doo spelled D-U-B-H?
Ah.
The Spooky Doo?
That's what we could call Odin.
The Spooky Doo. Well, yes, Odin came with us in the mystery machine, which is what Kieran wants to start calling the car.
Yes, so I know about this week's episode ahead of time.
And guys, we went on location, but I also made Kieran watch the most haunted episode about this week's topic.
Yes.
With me.
Yes, you did. We did that.
We just watched it.
Right before recording.
And we're going to talk about it.
So Eilidh just wanted to get me all filled with rage.
Yep.
Because we talked about it on the Culzean Castle episode. And I filled with rage then. And it has not dissipated since. Ah. Well, we should roll some music and we should dive in.
Well, before that, I don't know if we finished. I'm Eilidh. That's Kieran.
This is correct.
We are the Generally Spooky podcast.
Yes, we are.
And here's our music.
No, I'll let you listen to it. I won't sing it. This week, we're talking about Leith Hall.
Ooh, I'm excited. Kieran, tell me all about it.
Maybe we should have recorded that beforehand. I could have just tried to recite everything I remembered from the tour.
Maybe that'll be the blether.
Maybe. Oh no.
You just have to remember everything I've just said, which apparently is just as difficult.
Historically, that is correct, yes.
We've done quizzes on that over on Patreon if you're interested in hearing how little Kieran remembers of the episodes that we've recorded.
If you want to hear me being shamed, you can head over there.
You only shamed yourself.
I only have myself to blame, just like all my teachers told me.
Well, you're right. This week we are talking about Leith Hall.
Yeah, I've never got to say that. I wanted to, since you shamed me for my phone going off. I wanted to do something.
Yeah, I don't think you've ever done that. I don't think you've ever said the topic.
No, I don't think so. I also had my microphone pointing into the air, so hopefully that's picked up fine.
Not picking up any of your piss.
It's just aimed right up my nose instead.
Well, yes, we are talking about Leith Hall this week. I want to warn ahead of time that we're going to be talking a fair bit about colonialism and slavery in this episode. So if that's a trigger point for you, if it's upsetting, then maybe give this one a miss. The stories are important. They're ones that everyone should know about, but if it's a triggering subject for you, then that's something different. So just a little heads up, because we will be talking about it, not in detail.
And not favourably, just...
No, but for a somewhat extended period, because it comes up a lot in this story. So just a little heads up, in case that's something that upsets you. So, to avoid any confusion right at the beginning, Leith Hall is not in Leith.
You would think so.
My dad did. When I said we were going to Leith Hall, he was like, oh, that's a big trip. I was like, nope. We made it there and back in a day, and he thought we were down in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
We were not.
Yeah, he asked us how Edinburgh was. I was we didn't go to Edinburgh. You went to Edinburgh, because he'd just been...
Dad, are you alright? You were in Edinburgh.
Oh, yes, you're supposed to ask me that. Yes, Edinburgh was good.
I mean, he's a very old, frail man. We should excuse his shocking behaviour. Leith Hall is actually near Huntly, near Aberdeen, not near Edinburgh. There is a reason that it's called Leith Hall, even though it's not in Leith, which we are going to get into.
That's good.
It started life as a place called Peel Castle, which was a medieval castle, which was on the site of the current Leith Hall, but this castle doesn't exist anymore at all. This has been built on the site. Leith Hall started being built all the way back in 1650.
It's quite recent in terms of castles and halls we've looked at, really.
Yeah, for the ones that we've talked about, it is fairly recent, which is weird.
Yeah, only 400 years old.
No,
wow.
It's nearly 400 on the button.
What a spring chicken of a not castle. I keep wanting to say castle. I'm going to call it a castle.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is a castle. It's just called Leith Hall.
It's a bit castle-y.
It is. It is. It's a huge, big tower house that was then extended. And it's changed a lot in the 400 years that it's been around. But what's surprising is that it stayed largely in the same family for that entire stretch of time.
It's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Which isn't easy to do.
No.
Because everyone falls out with each other or takes over stuff. They managed, or blah, blah, blah. It was called Leith Hall because the family who managed to keep a hold of it for that 400 years had the surname Leith.
It's pretty good going.
So that was the reason it's called Leith Hall. And they owned the hall up until 1945. So nearly 300 years.
That's good work. Way to keep it in the family.
You made that sound really weird. I don't really know why.
It's because we're talking about aristocrats. It's always in the family.
Oh, I'm going to give you a pass because you're sick. In the head. What's interesting, and not technically connected with the hall, but something I wanted to mention, is that... I'm just lying. What's interesting, and not technically connected with the hall, because they weren't found in the grounds. They were found nearby, like in the area.
Okay.
They found a couple of Pictish stones, the Pitzligo stone and the wolf stone. They're very cool.
That's smart.
Like carved.
Wow.
And they're on display outside the hall in this little shed in the grounds.
Oh.
They just have a little display out in the open of these hugely significant historical finds.
We found these.
Yeah.
I think when we were there, they said the estate at one point was like 3,000 acres or something.
Insane.
So it makes sense if they found it somewhere nearby.
But it suggests that people have been living in the area for a long time.
Yes, it does.
Although you can make that argument for quite a lot of places in Scotland, because people have been here for a while and it's not a very big country.
No, most of it's mountain, as I said before.
Yeah. If you're not in the sea and you're not atop a mountain, there's not really a lot of space left.
Yeah.
So you're going to find bones. Leith Hall began life as a tower house, which we've talked about here in the podcast before. It's a style of Scottish castle that didn't really have a massive footprint on the ground, but was tall. So examples of this, if you wanted to see, would be Craigievar Castle. That's the pink one. I don't know if you've seen it before.
Oh,
Kieran.
yeah, I know that one.
That's a tower house. Fyvie Castle is also a tower house, and that's very close to Leith Hall. So it was the style of castle at the time. I'm assuming because it's easier to defend.
Yeah, it feels like them. Where are we talking about? Leith Hall.
Can you tell we're ill?
So many castles got mentioned there. Wait, which one? Leith Hall feels very close. It's very compact. When you stand in the little courtyard in the middle, it's very built up.
And that's been extended from the original tower house.
Yes.
Remember, the stuff that's there now wasn't part of the original building.
It's not more spread out in the way that like Glam's castle is, or Buckingham Palace, It's very long.
Yeah.
Not that it would be as big as Buckingham Palace, but you know what I mean.
No. So yeah, it started as a tower house. And it seems that the Leiths, who we're going to be talking about, had been in the area around Aberdeen for a couple hundred years before the hall was built. A direct ancestor of the Leiths who we're discussing, Lawrence Leith, was the Provost of Aberdeen in the early 1400s.
Oh, very cool.
I found a family tree, and I tracked them all the way back to him in 1411, but there's nothing after, or before that. Not after.
Before that, they took their leave. Like leave. Get it?
Make like a tree, Kieran. Now, when we visited Leith Hall, the guide who took us round said that the general belief is that the family the family originally came from further south in Scotland or from France.
Oh, okay.
But I couldn't find out exactly. I managed back to the 1400s.
That's pretty good.
That's your lot.
200 years pre-castle.
The tower house that I mentioned was constructed by James Leith. He's who we're starting with. He was 40 when he built the hall, so he was already pretty well established and had enough money that he could have this new castle built. But I don't really know a whole lot about him, really. There's not a lot available. I think his father-in-law was an important covenanter
Oh, okay.
Covenanter, which is something. He married a woman called Margaret Strachan, and they had 5 children together. And her dad, it seems like, was important in the Covenanter movement, but not strictly related to our tale. Their son, called John Leith, took on the hall when James died in 1694.
Okay.
Once again, I don't have a huge amount of information on him. He married a woman called Janet Ogilvy, whose father was Lord Banff.
Lord Banff.
Very important man, very wealthy, prestigious. And they had 6 children together. So another big family.
Busy, busy.
But remember, we're dealing with the law of primogeniture. Geniture?
Yes, that it goes to the son.
Well, they don't just pick a son at random.
Oh, it goes to the firstborn son.
There you go. There you go.
Looking at me for like, oh, go on, you're almost there. But that's all I have to say. That's it. That's your lot.
The law of primogeniture means that titles and family homes and all that good stuff gets left to the eldest son, not necessarily the eldest child. So when John Leith died, everything went to his eldest son, John Leith II.
That makes sense.
Even though he had other children.
John, son of John.
There are 4 John Leiths in total in this episode.
Son of John, son of John.
John Leith II made, and that's not how they were referred to, it's just what I'm doing for the sake of the episode so we can tell them apart.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He made an important marriage which would have an impact on his family for generations to come. He married a woman called Mary Hay, and her father was a man called Charles Hay of Rannis. And this created a connection between the Leiths and the Hays of Rannis moving forward, which would be very significant.
Very good, very good. I would have liked it if he was called Arthur. Hey, what a wonderful time of day.
You're either showing your age or you've just completely alienated a whole group of people. And from what I could see, Rannis Hall, which, because he was Charles Hay of Rannis, Rannis Hall was as close to a neighbour to Leith Hall as you can really get between like estates and rich people. So they weren't close, but they were the closest.
Yes.
They lived nearby, they were another important family. They held positions of power in the local community and they had a lot of money, which is important later on, so put a pin in that.
Yep. So it took 3 generations for them to potentially lose their money if they were... Oh no, it was just an important marriage, wasn't it? It wasn't specifically because they needed the money.
No, they got married.
Very nice.
And it's important to the family moving forward. Now, John Leith II and Mary were only married for 6 years before John died at the age of 38.
Oh.
But they'd had 2 children. Luckily, one of them was a boy.
Oh, thank heavens.
Another John Leith. So Leith Hall was in safe hands, apparently, because he was only 5 when his father died.
So what should we name the child? Does he have a penis? John. If he doesn't, John Alina.
John Leith III was only 5 when his father died, and he became the head honcho. When he was 7, his mother remarried, but not much gets said about that. I think the family Mary married into were heavily involved in the church, but that's really all there is. John III had a very intriguing life, which we're going to get back to in a little bit.
Ooh.
To keep you kind of in the loop and with enough context of where we are in history, John III was 14 when the 1745 Jacobite Rising broke out.
Oh, okay.
So he was too young to fight, although I seem to remember that there were some really young boys who fought at Culloden.
Yeah, 14 seems to be the cusp.
I'm pretty sure there were flag bearers and things who were 14 and on the field.
Yeah, I feel maybe either his mother didn't let him, or he wasn't a grown-up 14-year-old.
Well, that, or... because his position would have been kind of tenuous already, because he's 14 and in charge of the hall. So maybe there was just too much of a risk of him dying because things would be lost. There was no heir or anything.
Yeah, right enough.
Maybe. But he was too young to fight. He didn't fight during the Rising. But he had a relative who was not only old enough to get involved in the Jacobite cause, but was hugely passionate about it. And this was Mary's brother, so John III's uncle. He was a man called Andrew Hay of Rannis. He was Mary's older brother and had married a woman called Helen Fraser, who was from Inverness.
Oh, there you go.
Believe it or not, if I have my information correct. Being the eldest meant that, or the eldest son, I should say, meant that he was set to inherit the Rannis fortune that I talked about. Remember I said they were very wealthy. In 1742, before the Rising, Andrew is recorded as having taken an oath of allegiance to King George II.
What does that mean?
King George II is on the opposite side of the Jacobite cause.
Ah, I see.
He's a Hanoverian. But when the Bonnie Prince raised his standard at Glenfinnan in 1745, Andrew decided to join the Jacobites. He turned his back on his oath.
Very interesting.
I'm not sure if he was actually present at Glenfinnan or not. I can't tell from the information available. I don't know whether he went as a show of support or if he heard it happened and that changed his mind.
Very intriguing.
But he's a Jacobite. And they're very lucky to have him, because Andrew Hay was a whopping 7'2".
That's so tall.
That is very, very tall.
Especially for 1745.
Yep. Very intimidating to meet him in battle.
Yes.
Let me tell you.
I don't think I've ever met anyone over 7 foot.
Well, Kieran, it's interesting that you said that completely unscripted. Because there's been an awful lot of chatter following the Queen's funeral on Monday, because there was a man who walked in the funeral procession who everyone noticed was extraordinarily tall. And no one knew who he was.
Oh.
So when everyone saw he was super tall, they wanted to know who he was.
You would?
He was is Matthew Magee, Magee, from Northern Ireland, I believe. And he was the private secretary to the Queen.
Oh.
He is 7'2".
Oh, interesting.
I can show you a photo if you like.
Yes, I did not watch said procession.
Okay, I just have a screenshot that someone posted on Twitter. Okay, but this is Matthew.
Get the old glasses on. Wow. That's a tall gentleman. He looks like he's been scaled up on Photoshop.
It looks like the TV that someone's taken the screenshot on is at a weird angle. But
yeah.
He is 7'2".
Well, there you go.
So if you were interested in knowing what a 7'2" person looks like, we have a very current and relevant example.
How long is his jacket then? Because he's got a big coat with tails on it.
He's wearing a morning suit, Kieran.
That does make sense. It's a big coat with tails on it. Well,
So
there you go.
there you go. There you go. That's what someone looks like.
Damn.
7'2". And this will probably make you laugh, Kieran, more than anyone. But in the article I was reading, I saw that the Queen was 5'3".
Oh yeah.
Which is how tall I am. So I even have an idea of what the height difference would be like, because there'd be 2 feet between you.
As she's staring at the ceiling, talking to her secretary. It's a funny thought, isn't it?
I thought it was a funny thing to include. I thought you might enjoy it.
I do enjoy that. I've never felt so short at 6 foot tall.
Puny man. Puny god. Andrew actually met Prince Charles Stuart himself in person.
Dang.
At least once at Holyrood Palace in October of 1745.
Do you think he called him Chazza?
I hope not. Just because I hate it.
All right, Chazza.
And there's a silver gift box. It looks kind of like a cigar box. I forget what the guide said that it was. But it's a little silver box that Prince Charlie gave to Andrew as a gift. So he was held in reasonably high esteem. He's giving him gifts. And they did know each other.
Might be a writing set.
Possibly.
Can't remember.
I can't remember now. Andrew was made a Major of Horse.
Oh.
And I'm unclear what that means.
Don't know.
This is not a military history podcast. But he served in the regiment of Lord Forbes of Pitzligo, who had fought during the 1715 Rising.
Oh.
So Lord Forbes was a committed Jacobite.
Mm-hmm.
He was a vocal opponent of the Act of Union. He didn't support it. That had happened in 1703?
I won't even pretend to guess.
Take my historian card away, I can't remember. 1707.
Oh my god, she just googled that, everybody.
Yeah, I had to. I wanted it to be right.
Oh my god.
1707. He didn't agree with the Act of Union. And he was actually 67 in 1745.
Wow.
And he was still fighting.
Respectable.
And leading regiments. So he really believed in the cause.
Yeah. None of this once bowing to King George over there.
Nope. And side note, after Culloden, Lord Forbes hid in a cave for a while, which is still known as Lord Pitzligo's cave.
Well, there you go. Did we talk about that?
Maybe, I don't remember.
It rings a bell. Somebody hid in a cave. Might have been in the Glencoe massacre, which I feel was different. Can't remember.
I forget. Anyway, because Andrew was serving under Lord Forbes and with his regiment, and we know where the regiments were throughout the Rising, it seems that Andrew would have been there when the Jacobites had to retreat from Derby.
Okay, yep.
So I won't get too into it. We have a whole huge episode on the Battle of Culloden that talks about the Rising. So if you want to know more, I would listen to that. But the Jacobites made it to Derby and then retreated, even though they were trying to make it to London. And a letter exists that claims Andrew was the first Jacobite man to enter Manchester as they were marching south.
Very cool.
And it seems legit because his height is noted in the letter.
Well, it would be quite intimidating having him.
You would know him.
First going in. It's a wonder he didn't get shot, really. Being a full head and shoulders.
Maybe they didn't think a bullet would take him down.
Get the silver bullets!
I should also say that there's a cutout of Andrew Hay at Leith Hall. I think I will have posted the photo up on Instagram by now of Kieran standing beside it, if you want a better idea of how tall this is. As we know, though, the Jacobites lost the Battle of Culloden. And after their loss, lots of Jacobite clan chiefs and noblemen and sort of the major players in the Jacobite rebellion had to flee. A lot of them to France and to the continent to escape capture and execution. And Andrew was one of these. He had to go into hiding after the battle so that he wouldn't be murdered.
Need a big hiding place.
A big hole. Now, he travelled around a fair bit for many years. He didn't have a permanent home for a long time, and he was just trying to stay out of the way of the king's men. According to some of the articles and histories that I read, he actually hid out at Leith Hall for a while. They concealed him from the soldiers, apparently.
Yes, because it was his sister who lived there.
With her son, who is now in charge of Leith Hall, John the Third.
John the Third,
yep.
Not the Turd.
Well, I mean, that's debatable. Andrew finally managed to make it abroad in 1752. And he was funded by his loving mother after his dad died. She was in charge of the Rannis estate because Andrew wasn't at home, and he was the eldest son. So she was using the money to fund his escape and make sure he was okay. Now, luckily for Andrew's mum, the Rannis estate wasn't ravaged or plundered or destroyed, because during the 45, Andrew's father was still alive, but he hadn't taken part.
Oh.
So they spared his lands even though his son had rebelled against the king.
I feel that was lucky.
Yeah, that didn't happen for everybody.
Yeah.
But the flip side is that Andrew wasn't included in the Act of Indemnity, which was legislation brought out in 1747 that basically pardoned everyone who fought on the Jacobite side.
Oh, okay. Why not?
I don't know why not. I'm really not sure. I don't know if there were certain individuals that they didn't pardon with this act. But the reason they had the act, or do you remember, Kieran?
No.
The reason that they had the act was because they had executed several of the Jacobite leaders publicly, and they made a huge spectacle of it. And basically the tide turned against the government.
Oh.
Because people were seeing all of these public executions, and there were lots of them. And people started feeling sorry for the Jacobites. And started feeling like the government was being cruel.
Which is not what they wanted. They didn't want any sympathy for the Jacobites.
No. So basically they said, well, we can't kill any more of them, so we're just going to pardon them so this will go away.
That makes sense. They also shipped quite a lot of them off to Australia and other places, I think.
Yeah, they did various horrible things. They weren't killing them in public anymore. But Andrew wasn't included in this act.
I wonder if it's because he was never captured.
I don't know. I'm really not sure. And you'd think that he would lie low because he didn't receive a pardon, but he absolutely didn't. There were letters written about him that have survived, and they're basically complaining about how bold and blatant he was being in public. Like, he wasn't trying to hide.
I mean, how well could he hide? Or, like, blend into the crowd, you know?
Yeah. But, I mean, he was going a step above that, though. Like, he didn't seem remorseful at all. And he would spend a lot of time in pubs just, like, hyping up how the French were going to invade and they were going to finish what the Jacobites started, and talking about all the amazing battles that the Jacobites had been in.
Damn.
And it was even claimed that he was in the area around his family estate, that he was running the estate and everyone knew he was at home, but no one did anything about it.
That seems unusual. Strange.
Wild. So there were people writing letters complaining that the government weren't doing enough and they expected the military to do everything, and the military didn't really care.
Well, it's just one guy on a lost cause, almost running around like a raving lunatic, isn't it?
You're just having a good time.
Yeah. He's doing him. He's trying to make the best of it.
In 1747, the same year the Act of Indemnity was passed, Andrew, petitioned the king for a pardon. And he got one.
The power of asking right there.
He got one. And what's amazing, and I double checked because we talked about it at the time, this pardon from the king still exists. I think King George III by this time. They have it on display at Leith Hall, and I suspected it at the time, but it seems like it is the only surviving document of its kind that still exists.
Crazy.
This pardon of a Jacobite from the king.
It's on a piece of cloth that's like bigger than an A3 sheet of paper.
I think it's paper.
Is it
parchment? Paper.
Oh, I thought it looked like cloth or something.
No, I don't think so. I'm
a-
sure it's parchment at least.
Because it was a really weird material.
It is, but paper was produced differently then to now.
Yeah, I guess so.
It wasn't as fine.
Very cool, regardless.
Yeah, well, it is seemingly the only one of its kind.
Damn.
Which I think is incredible. Andrew was pardoned in 1780.
Bloody Royal Mail losing the post.
35 years after the Rising.
Damn.
So he was technically an outlaw for that long.
Oh, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what that's like.
And I think he did, I said it earlier, he did spend some time abroad. And
yes.
He travelled pretty wildly. He travelled pretty widely. But it seems like he missed home. And his health definitely suffered for not having more rest. So I think, according to some of the documents, he suffered from rheumatism. And it was aggravated by being in battle and also just from travelling a lot.
That's a sort of arthritis thing, isn't it?
I think
like
so,
a joint
yeah.
pain.
It causes you a lot of pain.
I imagine being 7'2" in the 1700s probably didn't help with that either.
Well, no, I doubt it.
I think the guide said it was something to do with his pituitary gland.
That would be the reason for his growth.
That's why he grew so tall, yeah.
But not for his ill health.
No.
Potentially. What's cool is there's still a big painting in the dining room of Leith Hall, which you really liked. I can't remember the name of the painting now, but it was basically a secret sign for any Jacobite sympathisers who came to the house.
Yep.
They would know that it was a safe place to talk. And in this painting, the main thing about it is that there's lots of things to do with water
Yes.
in the painting. And all of it is a hint that it's referencing and supporting the king over the water.
I thought it was very cool.
Who was King James.
I think it was like boy fishing in river or something.
Yeah, it's like a market scene almost.
Yeah.
On the water. But I can't remember the name.
The river flowing into the town.
Very cool.
Very cool. I really liked that.
Andrew died.
Oh.
And left behind a vast fortune. But he didn't have any children.
But he's being on the lam.
Kinda, yeah. Just being at war and then being on the run.
Yeah, and then on the pints, apparently.
But we're going to get back to him in just a little bit.
Oh.
Him and his now heirless fortune.
Tune in next week to find out the surprising conclusion of Andrew Hay.
We're going to talk about it now.
Oh, that's good.
Just later in the episode. For now, we are getting back to John Leith III. Remember, we were talking about him?
Yep, old Johnny boy.
Andrew was his uncle, and John III became the laird of Leith Hall upon the death of his father. Now, John III was in charge of Leith Hall while the rising was going on and his uncle was toting about and all that. And from what I can see of the renovations that happened to the hall, this John, was responsible for the construction of the east wing. So he changed the hall quite heavily, had a whole new part of the building built. And he married a woman called Harriet Stewart, who came from a very wealthy family herself. So she brought lots of money and power into the family, which now didn't belong to her, but, you know, wonderful.
Very good. Good move on his part, probably.
And they had 4 children together.
Was one of them called John?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
When there was 4 Johns, I assume this was...
Yes, one of them was called John. This is the last John.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, all would not be well for the couple. In December 1763, John was attending to business in Aberdeen. And on the 21st of December, he decided to take a break and visit what is now Archie Campbell's Tavern in Aberdeen. It's in Castlegate, if that means anything to anyone.
Not to me. Presumably it's where there was once a gate to a castle.
How do you know that?
I'm actually a psychic on the side.
Oh my god. Now, nothing can go wrong when you're having a few drinks at your local pub.
What could possibly go wrong?
Am I right, Kieran?
Nothing's gone wrong for me.
Well, everything went wrong for John Leith.
Oh no.
The story goes like this. John was knocking back a few, and he ended up getting into an argument with a man called James Abernethy of Mayen, who was another local landowner.
Abernethy's an unusual name.
It is, not one you hear very often. Now, this argument was so serious that the two of them decided to duel each other.
Oh, heavens.
And it was a duel exactly how you imagine a duel. Each of them had a pistol, they went out into the street, faced each other, and fired. But another version of the story says that the two of them got into a drunken brawl.
Oh, good heavens. Not with Abernethy Scrooge. Not near Christmas.
Oh, no. In both versions of this story, at the end of their fight, John Leith III has a bullet in his head.
Ooh. Well, you know what they say. I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy.
Who says that?
I don't know.
Who says that?
People have been shot in the head. Maybe.
Are you quite well?
Not particularly, no.
Yes, John was shot in the head. He was taken to a house nearby, apparently, but he never recovered from the wound, and he died on Christmas Day.
Oh, man. I'm surprised he lasted 4 days with a bullet in his head.
Well, it seems that the fight occurred on the night of the 21st.
Oh.
Sort of like around midnight, I think. Because some people say it happened in the morning of the 22nd. So it's a bit iffy. But yeah, like 3 or 4 days.
Mental.
But if that's not bad enough, his wife, Harriet, who was at home at Leith Hall, was pregnant with their 4th child.
Oh, no.
Who then died not long after he was born.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
Oh.
Really sad.
Yeah.
Every way.
That's not a happy Christmas.
No, absolutely not. Now, it's never been absolutely proven that John was killed by Abernethy, mainly because Abernethy was never taken to trial for shooting John. So, it's never been proven because he was never taken to trial.
That would make sense.
But it's widely thought to be him. Lots of people saw them arguing. There were other people there who reported the fight and how they weren't getting on. And all of that. So it seems like it was him. But there's a theory that the duel was pre-planned. That this was a setup to take down John Leith.
Oh.
The guide who took us around the hall actually explained that some people reported that John had 2 bullet holes in his head.
Interesting.
And that the fight got way out of hand. He was egged on and he was pushed into having this duel. And if it was an above-board duel, there would only be one bullet hole in his head.
Yep.
But some people said there were two.
Ooh.
And duels didn't really happen anymore at this time.
I was just wondering, when did dueling stop?
I don't really know. I want to say, like, fairly recently, but it was kind of going out of fashion. Like, I think in France, at this time, it was illegal to duel.
Oh, yeah.
I think they stopped you being able to do it.
That would make sense. Can you imagine there being a crowd there like, I definitely saw 2 bullet holes. Those were nostrils.
Wow.
There's 2 right in the middle. Where are you?
What are you saying? He shot him in one side and it went right the way through to the other. I saw.
Oh, nothing worse than pub chatter for getting the truth. Maybe he never got tried because everyone just agreed that John was an arsehole.
Maybe.
And he probably deserved it.
Maybe. I don't know. John's wife Harriet did pursue Abernethy legally. So she didn't let it go. But when he was to be brought to trial, he had already disappeared.
Oh.
Pretty much as soon as the shooting took place, he fled. Because he knew what would happen.
Yep.
So he was exiled for not showing up. Even though he had already fled.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
So he was now not allowed to come back.
Yes.
Now, I read the court documents from the time.
Wow.
They're very confusing.
I'm not surprised.
Basically, he didn't show up, so Harriet and her children got financial compensation.
Oh, well, that's good.
But the court couldn't actually find him guilty of the murder.
Uh-huh.
So while his estate technically had to pay up, it wasn't because he killed her husband.
Huh.
I think the payment was because he didn't show up.
Oh, I see.
Because they can't say he murdered him because he hasn't had a trial.
But he is guilty of not showing up to court.
Yes.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
It was all very confusing.
I mean, it doesn't make sense generally, but what you said makes sense.
Well, I think the court kind of knew it was him.
Yeah.
But because of due process, they can't just accuse him of that.
She's not a witch. You can't just accuse people of things.
Now, I know you knew the story already, Kieran, but probably not what you expected from going around Leith Hall.
No, not at all. That was very surprising. That there was a murder. In that fashion. Just in like a pub brawl to the extreme.
It's very unseemly.
Yeah. It was interesting that the guide was saying during the duel, if they still happened, it tended to just be like an ego and pride thing, and they used to just aim high. So neither of them actually tried to shoot the other person.
It's kind of like chicken.
Yeah.
You're hoping that the other person bows out because they're too scared. Like, you don't actually want to kill them. You just want to humiliate them a bit.
I suppose depending how far apart you were, it's probably quite hard to aim one of those pistols.
Mm-hmm.
I don't imagine they were particularly accurate.
I think it's a flintlock pistol. I think that was common at the time. But I don't know. I'm just making it up as I go along.
I'd be an upset. You didn't actually do research, you just invented a script.
I'd almost be impressed.
I don't fact check. You could be telling me anything.
If you do fact check the podcast, let me know. John III's eldest son became the head of the family after his death. And he was also called John.
But of course.
John IV.
John IV. Mon the John.
Now, young John was only 6 when his father was killed. So another young heir to the Leith fortune.
Well, he got an extra year than his dad did, so...
It's just sad.
It's just sad, sorry, I'm fidgeting.
Very sad.
Yeah.
But Harriet, John's mother, really invested in her children's education. Because remember, they had 3 other children, aside from the one that she lost.
Yes.
All boys. She really invested in them. Their education was really important to her. And she paid through the nose to make sure they got the best that was on offer.
Wow.
She sold her inheritance that she got from her father, which I think was like £11,000 at the time. So it would have been a fortune. She sold whatever inheritance she had to pay for their education.
Wow.
That's how committed she was.
That is committed. Did they use it well? Did they squander it?
No, it seems like it paid off because they were all successful and they were all okay. John spent time in France, apparently as a page in the French court. So he became a pretty smart cookie. He was tutored over there, he was taught over there, a very well-rounded young man. But John the Fourth was pretty sickly.
Oh no.
Which is bad news in the late 1700s, let me tell you. There isn't a lot of information available about John the Fourth, and that's because he died young.
No.
John died in 1776 when he was only 19. And in fact, one of the only reasons we know what we do about John is because his mother, Harriet, wrote so many letters about him, and the letters survived.
That's nice.
So she wrote a lot about how he was getting on in his education, but she also wrote a lot about his illness, which is how we kind of know what happened. She was really worried about him and deliberately sent him somewhere warmer in the hope that it would help him recover. And she wrote a lot about how he would take seizures.
I was just wondering, do we know what was wrong with him?
Not exactly. She writes about him having seizures, and during these seizures, he would spit blood.
Oh no.
So it seems like something really severe that they couldn't really treat.
Yeah.
And she writes a lot about how expensive it is to get his medicine and to get all of the doctor's treatment that he was getting. So she spared no expense on her children. She really cared.
I wonder what that looked like. What sort of medicine he was given.
No, I feel like the only thing I have in my head would be like bloodletting.
Yeah, I was thinking leeches.
I feel like that's... Or maybe not even leeches, but just bloodletting seemed to be the answer for everything.
Yeah.
But it seemed like something quite gnarly was going on with John. That doesn't sound pleasant.
No.
Now, he's only 19. He doesn't have any children. So what happens, Kieran?
Does it go to the next brother?
It does. It goes to John's younger brother, Alexander Leith. Now, he was known as Sandy by his family, so I'll refer to him as that as well.
Sounds good. Not Xander, baby.
No. Sandy, just to keep things easy. Now, I read that he took on Leith Hall in 1778, which would be 2 years after his brother's death.
Yes.
And it would be when he turned 20. So I don't know if that was part of him taking it on, that he had to be 20
Maybe.
to be fully in charge. I'm not sure. Because Harriet died in 1780. So
10 years later? No.
2 years later.
2 years later.
But what I'm saying, he didn't have to wait for her to die
Yes.
to take it on, basically. I'm not really sure what the crossover was.
Dunno.
But things get a little hairier for the Leiths once Sandy takes on the mantle. Once Sandy's top dog.
Does he let it all go to shit?
Kind of. Sandy is an irresponsible spender.
Uh-oh.
He spends more than he has, and he spends more than he has coming in, which is a problem. Sandy had married a woman called Mary Forbes, and had actually been on a military career track before taking over Leith Hall. Because remember, he was never supposed to inherit.
Of course, yep.
He's the second son. And it was quite typical in a noble family, a fancy family, for second and third sons to make careers for themselves in the military.
Yep, that's happened elsewhere in the other families we've looked at.
Yep, it was very common. So that's what Sandy was doing when his brother died young. Or it's what he was set to do.
Yeah.
He was young himself. But what was dodgy was it initially looks impressive because Sandy was a general in the army. But he bought his rank and title.
Well, that's not good. I assumed he got it because of his wealth and status.
No, it was bought for him when he was born.
That
was a common practice in rich families.
Ah. Well, that explains why they always fast-tracked to the top of the upper echelons. Because that happened right up until World War I, really, I think.
Ensuring that... And World War II, I think.
Was it World War II still as well?
But, you're ensuring that they're an officer.
Buy an officership. Not an officer's ship.
And I also think it was Sandy who, according to the guide at Leith Hall, said that his wife wasn't pretty, but she'd do.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty sure that's this man.
And there was a big painting of her, and he was right.
No. So Sandy was all set to become a military man. He has his wife. He's now inherited Leith Hall.
He's got into the military without the actual danger of being at war by being a general.
Yes.
Good skills.
But we need to briefly come back to Andrew Hay, the tall Jacobite.
Oh, hey, we missed you.
He was Sandy's great-uncle. So his father's uncle.
An intimidating figure.
Remember? Mm-hmm. He had died in 1789 with no children, which was the year after Sandy had been given Leith Hall. Andrew left his entire fortune to Sandy.
Not the donkey sanctuary?
No. He left it to Sandy on the condition that Sandy took the surname Hay.
Yeah, very nice, very nice.
So Alexander Leith became Alexander Leith-Hay, changing the family surname up until the present day.
Good work. Smart move on the whole. Because it's not his fault that Sandy's an idiot.
No.
Sandy's an idiot.
No. But that's why I said we'll come back to him. Because that's where the money went. Because he had no children.
All comes back around.
So Sandy's just come into a hell of a lot of money.
Yep.
Which was lucky, because he managed to spend pretty much all of it.
I think I remember seeing somewhere the statistic that wealth tends to last 3 generations before it gets lost. So that would be 4 generations there. What an idiot.
It was lucky that Sandy had all of this money, but also kind of unlucky, because with all of this cash, he started making lots of improvements and changes to the hall. Lots of construction happened during Sandy's time. He added to the existing hall quite substantially. But he was spending wildly and having lots of parties and living the lavish lifestyle without really having anything to back it up.
Yeah, without doing any work.
Yeah. In the end, I'm fairly sure from what I was looking at, he had to make deals and create these trust deed documents with other estate owners, or like using his other properties to finance the hall.
Oh, wow.
So he was in a hole, big time. I didn't fully understand what I was looking at, because I don't really understand finance. It's not my thing. But now we're going to get into some really dicey territory, because this is where colonialism rears its ugly head. Because remember, we're in the late 1700s and early 1800s. So empire is thriving.
Got you.
At this time. There is some debate, but it seems like there's documentary evidence that Sandy used money that he received as part of an inheritance from a plantation in Trinidad and Tobago to fund his work on the hall.
Oh.
If you somehow don't know, plantations, like the ones in the Caribbean, were using slave labour on land that had been taken from the native people, settled by the white people, and the natives were forced under foreign rule and became part of the slave trade because people from Africa were being traded to plantations in the Caribbean. It's awful.
Horrendous.
These documents seem to show a woman called Elizabeth Leith, and I'm not sure where the relation is. She was a wealthy heiress who owned property in Tobago, but she was declared insane.
Oh.
Which meant that she couldn't be responsible anymore for any property, any assets, any chattel, meaning slaves.
Ew.
So she was a slave owner. And Sandy jumped in to be made her heir because he was her closest relative.
Suspect.
But I don't know how they're related. It seems like they were, but I don't know how. Because he wanted her property and her money, and it seems like he got it.
Ugh, what a horrendous person.
Yeah. It gets worse, don't worry.
Oh, no.
Sandy's cousin, a man called Patrick Leith, travelled to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which are islands in the Caribbean, in 1771. And in 1795, Patrick Leith murdered Joseph Chatoyer. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm really sorry if it's wrong. His surname is Chatoyer. And he was the Garifuna chief in St. Vincent.
Oh, okay.
Patrick killed him in a duel. And this was a massive deal because it completely rocked the Garifuna people.
Mm.
An epic was written about this encounter, a poem called Heruna, and it's really sad because, it equates the death of Chatoye with the death of the indigenous land.
Oh my god.
So it equates his death with the start of St. Vincent's time as a colony. It's that significant.
Oh my days.
And it's really sad. And that was Sandy's cousin who did that.
Sigh.
Yeah. Now, a woman called Dr. Daisha A. Osborne has been looking into the links, good and bad, between Leith Hall and the Caribbean.
Interesting.
She's done a huge amount of work. I think possibly her PhD, she's been doing some pretty heavy research. She knows a lot more than I do. Her work is super interesting, and she's been working with the National Trust to bring all of this to light, everything she's been looking into. Highly recommend reading her work. It's all on the National Trust website, National Trust for Scotland. And unfortunately, Patrick Leith wasn't the only Leith-Hay to benefit from imperialism. It just keeps going from here.
Well, I imagine it just kept going until it stopped.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
Sandy's younger brother.
Which seems a really stupid thing to say now that I think about it.
I understood what you meant.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to go.
Until it was forced to stop.
Yeah, it's going to go until it doesn't. Wow.
So insightful. Sandy's younger brother, his youngest brother, James Leith, was also an officer in the army. Because remember, Harriet had 3 sons. He was made the town mayor of Gibraltar.
Oh, okay.
During his career. He fought during the 1798 rebellion in Ireland against the Irish. He was part of the Anglo-Portuguese army that served under the Duke of Wellington. So he got around.
Yep.
And he is not a good man.
That doesn't surprise me.
Not a good man. Even a little bit.
Oh no.
And a lot of the memoirs and things written about him are awfully complimentary, and I don't think they should be.
Oh, they always are.
So it's not going to be complimentary here.
That's fine.
If you're a Leith-Hay fan, you might not like it. In 1814, James Leith, the brother of Sandy, so he was never in charge of Leith Hall, James Leith. Leith. He was made commander of the forces in the West Indies and captain general of the Leeward Islands. Now, the Leeward Islands were a collection of Caribbean islands under British rule. This structure doesn't exist anymore. The Leeward Islands were a colony. That's just how they referred to a collection of the islands at that time. Because remember, it wasn't just Britain who had colonies. Like you had the French and Spanish, everyone. The Leeward Islands was the name of the colony. And James Leith was in charge of these islands.
Yep.
And I think I'm just going to read to you from an article that a woman called Jennifer Melville wrote. She's part of the Facing Our Past project that the National Trust for Scotland have been doing. And that's who Dr. Osborne was releasing her findings and research with.
Cool.
Very interesting. And this article was published in 2020.
Okay.
So it's all fairly recent and being looked into now. So definitely check it out. By this time that Jennifer Melville is about to talk about, I believe that James was the governor of Barbados.
All right.
But the titles are a little confusing and I don't really know when things happened exactly.
Yeah.
But by this time he was the governor of Barbados.
I'm with you.
Because, he obviously knows it better than everybody else.
I know, it's just all makes you sad, doesn't it?
Oh, you're going to get a lot sadder.
No.
You're going to get a lot sadder.
Oh, let me blow my nose first then.
And you're just going to have to sit in it. Are you ready?
Well, not really, but yes.
In April 1816, his troops quashed a slavery revolt in Barbados, known as Busa's Rebellion. Rather than seeing the revolt as an understandable reaction to the appalling plight of the enslaved people, Governor Leith blamed the free black community on the island for corrupting their otherwise peaceful state with dangerous notions of equality and freedom. He lamented the mischievous delusions of those who have availed themselves of every circumstance to influence the minds of the slave, and the wicked attempts to indoctrinate the enslaved masses. Governor Leith also feared the influence of the international abolitionist movement, and wrote of how discussions which have so generally taken place on the question of slavery, attended by the misconception, heat, and exaggeration of many individual opinions, could not have occurred to such an extent without producing dangerous effects and causing the enslaved to question their natural condition.
Oh.
Reporting back on the actions of his troops, Leith estimated that 50 rebels had been killed during the fighting, and 70 were executed soon after. However, in late September, he reported that the number of those condemned to death had risen to 144, while another 170 were sentenced to be transported. The executions were carried out in public, and across the island in what has been described as an exercise in psychological terror designed to create the strongest impact upon the innocent enslaved. Within 2 weeks of the uprising, Governor Leith issued a proclamation, unusual in that it was addressed directly to the enslaved people, reiterating their unchanged and unchangeable condition. He dismissed any notion of emancipation and called upon them to return with cheerfulness. Otherwise, he threatened, they would force him to use his ample power to crush the refractory and punish the guilty. Governor Leith was feted as a hero in both Britain and France. In November, the recently restored King of France, Louis XVIII, awarded him the Grand Cordon of the Order of Military Merit for his role in securing France's West Indian colonies. But it was too late. Leith had contracted yellow fever on the 10th of October and died 6 days later. His body was returned to England, where he was given the great honour of being buried in Westminster Abbey.
Oh, that's just horrendous. I don't even have any words.
There is nothing to say to that.
No.
I'm not surprised.
No, not surprised at all. It's not a surprising story. It's just a horrible, sad story.
Like, it's not surprising that he did these things. No. It's not surprising that he was buried in Westminster Abbey, because of course he fucking was. But it's just awful.
Yeah. Truly awful.
It's awful, and like, he did that. He was a real person.
Yep.
He was from Scotland. He was a Scottish man, just like we are.
Mm-hmm.
And he did that. And I think usually, certainly as a Scottish person, I think the luxury of being a white person is that you think of slavery as being in America.
Mm-hmm.
Or like the English were doing it in the Empire. But that's not true.
No.
Not even a little. Which is why I wanted to include it in the episode, because he said these things in public in a position of power.
Yeah.
And he killed a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. It's just so sad.
Yeah. And a lot of his verbiage is very upsetting.
Yeah.
The unchangeable and the unchanged.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sickening.
Really is.
So yeah.
Mm.
Now, I don't know if this is still the case, but there certainly used to be a place in Jamaica called Leith Hall.
It is still the case.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I put it into Google Maps to see how far away it was, I couldn't drive there because it took me to Jamaica. And I went, why has this taken me to Jamaica? I want Leith Hall, Scotland. There you go.
Well, it seems like there was a connection. It's not entirely sure who actually named it that and where the connection is. But it seems like there is a connection to the Leith Hall here.
There must be.
There's lots of places in Jamaica that either were or are named after places in Scotland.
Yeah.
In Jamaica, you have places like Aberdeen, Culloden, Glasgow, Inverness, Perth. And unfortunately, lots of the plantations that used slaves were also named after Scottish places.
I suppose that does make sense, doesn't
Scottish
it?
people played a huge part in the slave trade and colonisation of the Caribbean and further abroad, but we're talking about the Caribbean today, mainly. Now, would you believe that Jamaica actually has the highest percentage of people with Scottish surnames outside of Scotland?
Oh, yeah.
It's not Canada, It's not New Zealand, like I would have assumed, for sure.
Yeah.
Around 60% of people in Jamaica have surnames that originated in Scotland.
Wow. That's weird.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's that legacy.
Yeah. How bizarre.
When Sandy died in 1838, you remember who I'm talking about, Sandy?
Yep, Xander baby.
Big spender.
Big spender, renovated the castle, pissed all his money away.
Yes. When he died, his son took over, a man called Andrew Leith-Hay. Now, Andrew ended up being stuck with a lot of the debt that his father Sandy had incurred during his lifetime.
Well, that makes sense, doesn't it?
Because he didn't deal with it.
Yep.
He just kept spending, so it got left to Andrew.
Yeah, and I imagine it was all tied to the estate rather than tied to him specifically.
Big time. Andrew was another Leith-Hay who was serving in the British Army, which is interesting because the guide who took us around Leith Hall said that the men of the Leith-Hay family kind of had a point to prove after the Jacobite rebellion. That they had to prove that they supported the king.
Oh, yes, that makes sense.
So they continued to fight in the British Army for several generations afterwards.
Interesting.
Now, Andrew actually served under his uncle, James Leith, who I was just talking about. That's why I thought to bring him up.
Oh, that makes sense.
Governor of Barbados, all of that. Andrew was in the Caribbean with him, and he was a skilled artist. And one of his jobs in the army was to scout out locations ahead of the army, sketch it out, draw the terrain, and then bring it all back as intelligence.
Yes. Was there one of his paintings?
Yes.
Yes.
A big stormscape.
That he did when he was 14, and it was incredible.
Yeah, and it's just sickening.
Yeah, it was
14?
so talented.
So yeah, that's what he did. He drew as a spy and then took it all back.
Yeah. That's funny.
When his uncle James died, who he admired greatly...
Well, they didn't think they were doing anything wrong.
For everything he did. He wrote his uncle's memoir.
Yuck.
Andrew stayed in the Caribbean until the early 1830s, when he returned to Scotland and he decided that he would give politics a go.
Oh.
Because he was done with being in the army.
Well, that is the natural career progression.
Yeah, like he's wealthy, he can just do it and it's fine.
Yeah.
He can just do politics.
So, being a politician, how much money do you have? Oh, quite a lot, and a big castle. Okay, yeah, you fit the bill.
Now, he had married a woman called Mary Margaret Clark, and their portraits are hanging in Leith Hall. And they're pretty telling, because he's painted as a grand military hero in the distinctive red jacket. And she's painted as Una from Edmund Spenser's poem The Fairy Queen, which was popular at the time. And Una was kind of used as a symbol for Britain and colonisation and all of that. Because in the poem, Una tames a lion after it becomes, quote, captivated by her innocence and beauty.
Oh, I remember this painting.
So in the painting, she's dressed as Una and there's a lion in the background.
Yes.
And this was quite common symbolism. There were lots of paintings like this at the time because it became representative of Britain and its colonies. Just ick. All right, ick.
A lion in Jamaica.
Andrew became an MP for the Elgin boroughs. Yippee for him.
It's good for him. I wish him all the worst with it.
Yeah, kinda.
Yeah.
The Slavery Abolition Act was passed in 1833.
Okay.
If you didn't know. And this abolished slavery in most British colonies. And it freed more than 800,000 enslaved Africans in the Caribbean and South Africa.
Wow.
As well as a small number in Canada.
Mental. Actually mental.
Now, although it passed in 1833, it didn't actually come into effect until 1834.
Okay.
Which I think is fairly common. Andrew did vote for the abolition of slavery, but he wasn't happy about it. He didn't want to.
Yeah. Well, he wouldn't, would he?
He was kind of begrudging about voting to free all of these people.
Yeah.
He gave a speech in 1833 on the subject. Would you like to hear what he said?
Not really, if I'm honest.
You're going to. You're going to, because you have to. Enslaved people were not yet prepared for the gift of freedom. They were at present an indolent and idle race, and it could not be expected that they would work unless there existed some means of making them.
Ugh.
Which is heinous.
So bad.
In the same year that they've abolished slavery, he's still coming out with this attitude.
Oh, that's so bad.
And it's just, he's talking about these people as if they're not people.
Yeah.
And
it's hard to hear.
It's frightening.
Yep. Because it's not that long ago.
No.
Not long enough.
Fucking not.
Ew.
It's not as packed away and in the past as a lot of people like to hope.
Yep.
Which is scary.
Ugh.
In 1838, he was made the governor of Bermuda.
No.
Well, the act that passed in 1833 abolished slavery. It didn't abolish the colonies. There's a difference.
Oh, so did they just really badly pay all their workers instead?
Oh, it's worse than that.
Oh, no.
Lots of islands in the Caribbean were still under British rule.
Yep.
Because they didn't... That was fine.
They didn't have to give them back, obviously.
No, that was fine.
Obviously.
I'm pretty sure... Was it St. Vincent I looked at? Or Trinidad and Tobago? One of them didn't get independence from Britain until the late 70s.
Ugh.
And I'm pretty sure Barbados only just became a republic in the past few years.
Mental.
It's insane. Anyway. You want to hear something super tricky and dodgy that they did after the abolition of slavery?
Go on.
Slaves weren't granted their freedom in the Caribbean when the act passed.
Uh-huh.
They had to go through a period of apprenticeship first.
Oh, no.
And I'm pretty sure this happened in America after the Civil War and things. I don't think this is unique. They had to stay with their former masters and carry on working for them for another 4 to 6 years. And they didn't get paid. They were working for their food and their board, but they got no money.
Oh.
So they weren't able to save anything to then go out on their own, finally.
No, you'll need to apprentice before you can do this work. So I've been doing this work my entire life.
It's not even that. It's like you have to apprentice to be your own person. How sick is that?
Sick. Totally sick.
4 to 6 years.
Ugh.
And you have to work for the people who were probably beating you and killed your family. Oh,
yep.
It's just disgusting. It's
Absolutely.
just disgusting. This is why I gave the warning at the top.
Yeah.
Because it's so upsetting. So upsetting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of glad that Andrew couldn't swan off to be the governor of Bermuda.
He could not?
He couldn't take up the position in 1838. Can you tell me why?
1838. Did he die?
Nope.
Get sick?
Nope, not yet.
Have to do something to his house?
He was in too much debt.
Ooh.
He couldn't afford to go and be the governor of Bermuda.
Well, good.
Right? Yeah, the debt that he inherited from his father's bad decisions and then the bad decisions that he made for himself meant he couldn't afford to go. Because it cost a pretty penny to be made an MP.
Ah.
And to fund your political career and your campaigns and your business ventures.
Interesting.
Now, what was pleasing to me is that he and his family became the subject of gossip.
Oh.
When the bailiffs appeared at their London home and started taking their things away to pay their debtors.
That is...
Creditors, I guess. They credited them. If you're a debtor, you owe the money.
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, the bailiffs came, they started taking their things away. They even started taking the personal belongings of their servants.
Wow.
That's how much they owed.
Well, it's a small comeuppance in comparison, but I'm happy there's something.
But what's crazy is even with all of this debt, we're talking about Andrew. Yeah, Andrew. With all this debt, he had a loch added to the grounds of Leith Hall during his time as the head honcho.
Wait, was there one nearby and he bought it, or did he get one dug in?
I think he had one dug in. I think he had one like added to the grounds.
Oh no!
Possibly. That's how I'm choosing to imagine it. Maybe there was a nearby one that he just bought, but I am imagining that he had a loch dug into the grounds.
Well.
Rich people make no sense.
No. Oh, it's just painful.
Yeah.
It's just painful.
I do have a little bit of joy for you.
Uh-huh.
Because he died in 1862.
Not soon enough.
And I have a bit of his obituary here for you.
Oh.
If you would care to hear it.
Please.
On Tuesday, he was at a county meeting held in Aberdeen, in the enjoyment of his usual health, and even on Monday last he was out on his pony after midday, and was dead before 4 o'clock on the same afternoon. The cause of his sudden death, it is believed, being constipation of the bowels.
Okay, you got me. That has put a smile back on my face. I was going to say he shat himself to death, but he did entirely the opposite of that.
He couldn't shit himself to death. That was his problem.
Maybe that's why he was on his pony.
Trying to
loosen things.
So there you go. I thought that might bring you a little bit of joy.
Yes, can you die of constipation? Apparently so.
I mean, I would say so.
Yeah, but what was he eating? Bark. He's so poor he was just eating the trees.
I don't know. I don't know what water quality would have been like.
I guess so. Oh, no.
I'm not very sure of the details. And I only include it because, you don't look so high and mighty when you have a poop-related death, Mr. Almost Governor, but not quite, but I hate most people.
Ugh. Well, a timely end. Mm-hmm. Who's next?
Well, when Andrew died, his son took over Leith Hall. Colonel Alexander Sebastian Leith-Hay, who I'm going to refer to as Sebastian.
Sebastian.
Because it's a more unique name. So
yep.
It makes him stand out. Sebastian was actually born in the Caribbean.
Oh, yeah.
When Andrew was out there. Mm-hmm. He was born there. What I found a bit strange is that Andrew named his son Sebastian, gave him the middle name Sebastian, after a battle that he fought in. Because Andrew took part in the Battle of San Sebastian.
Huh.
So I don't think I would like being named after a battle that my father fought in.
That's weird.
But maybe it's different in a military family.
Maybe. I'm pretty sure Ralph Macchio, who played the Karate Kid, mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure he has a son called Daniel, who is the character of the Karate Kid.
Really?
Name. I'm pretty sure.
Did that?
I'm pretty sure.
Oh my god.
Because I thought that would be super cringe.
But then he's 25 in the first Karate Kid. Maybe he already had a son.
Maybe, potentially.
He was a full man when they filmed that.
Yep, I just watched them the past couple of days, that's why that was in my head. That also just might be a lie, but I'm pretty sure that's true. We don't have time to fact check around here.
I mean, I could check if you want me to.
No, we knew in the blether.
Sebastian was another military man. His first ranks were also bought for him, but he earned his later ones because he actually saw active service.
Good, I guess.
Which Sandy never did.
Yeah. Yeah, better. I suppose he was a military man because he didn't really have a choice. It sort of decided for him if he got his rank bought at birth.
But I think he was the eldest son.
Yeah. He obviously got a lot, the dad obviously got a lot from his own military career and wanted the same for his son.
You do wonder how much that's the influence.
Yeah.
That it's an object of pride to have your son in the army behind you.
Following your footsteps.
Sebastian fought in the Crimean War against mm-hmm. Russia and later served in India. In the 1850s. And there are several artefacts still at Leith Hall that he brought back from India that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
He shouldn't have taken them. India at this time, if you don't know it, huge areas of it at least, if not the whole country, was under British rule. But Sebastian was there during the Indian rebellion against the Brits, and he was there on the side of the British trying to maintain order. And he took some souvenirs back from the siege of Lucknow, where the British lost.
Oh my god.
Mm-hmm. He also served in Canada and fought against the Canadian Rebellion in 1838. I really feel like the British Army should just take the hint.
I was just thinking that, take the hint, man.
Yeah, nobody wants you.
Yeah, just go get back in your lane,
just mind your business. Now, I saved telling you about his service in Canada till last because there is a story attached to it that involves a canine companion.
I know this story.
It's a heartwarming story of bravery, but it's very sad. Mm-hmm. Very, very sad. Sebastian had a dog called Tipo, who I believe, judging by the portrait that he's in, I think Tipo was some kind of Newfoundland.
Oh, yeah.
Or at least some kind of cross or variation. He looks very Newfoundland or Bernese Mountain Dog-esque. He certainly looks big.
I thought he looked like Odin.
He's so cute. Tipo was in Canada with Sebastian. He was a military dog, so he went everywhere with Sebastian. And while they were in Canada, Sebastian went moose hunting. And while out moose hunting, he got on the wrong end of a very large moose. If you don't know, moose are the size of fucking hooses.
Do you think he got thrown off because he was Scottish? Oh, you've got to watch out for the moose. What about the moose? There's a wee moose in the corner. Like he's just scurrying about. Like,
he just didn't believe that moose exists.
Yeah, like a moose isn't scary. Wee thing, long tail, little ears, squeak, 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 and then sees a moose in Canada and goes, "Oh my god!"
I mean, if there was ever a time to shit yourself, that would be it.
Your first moose encounter?
I'm scared of moose.
They're so big.
They're so big. Sebastian is on the wrong end of one of these moose. And it's not looking good. Sebastian thought he was going to die. There was no way he was going to make it out of this encounter. But Tipo saved him.
Aww.
He put himself in harm's way to protect Sebastian from the moose attack. But Tipo died.
Oh, poor Tipo.
A good boy until the end. Sebastian loved him so much that he had Tipo brought back to Leith Hall with him. And he buried Tipo in the grounds of the hall. And Tipo was included in the big portrait of Sebastian that hangs in the hall itself. And there's a bronze bust of Tipo hanging in the entrance hall.
There is.
Which we saw, and the bust does look a lot like Odin.
It does. Our dog Odin.
Like, strikingly so.
It's quite strange.
I think we should have more paintings and sculptures of Odin.
Just about the house.
Yeah, I think he deserves it. I'm quite happy that he doesn't fight moose, but he's still a good boy.
I think if we got a big bust of him like that one we saw, he would bark at it.
Probably. He does like barking at dogs on the telly.
He had a hard time with his reflection, so...
He did. I might repost that. I posted a video of him barking at or growling at his reflection. I mean, I'm quite happy with him just chasing pheasants and pigeons.
Yep.
He doesn't need to hunt moose for me. He's a good boy.
He can just chase them out the garden. That's fine. That's plenty. Barking at flies.
But if anyone specialises in like oil paintings who would like a subject, then I would quite like an oil painting of my dog, please. A very grand oil painting. We can hang it in the new office. We have all of this wall real estate.
We don't have anything hung up in here now.
I mean, there's a cracking space right beside your desk.
Yep, just right over my desk.
Yep.
So he's always looking at me, giving me side eye. This could work. This could work. Now, I assume the wrong end of a moose is the front end.
Well, it depends what's happening, Kieran.
We'll see, because I was thinking the wrong end of Sandy is the back end.
Do you mean Andrew?
Yes, I do. If that's how the guy who constipated himself to death.
That was Andrew.
Yeah, fucked up the joke. Fucked it up, everyone. Sorry. I took a shot.
I mean, I appreciate you listening.
I'm trying.
That's a win. Sebastian married a woman called Christina Hamilton, and by all accounts they had a really happy marriage, but they didn't have any children. Sebastian had 6 siblings, but when he died in 1900, none of them were still living, even though he had been the oldest sibling.
That's a hard life.
I don't think they died unnaturally, it just happened that they had all died before he did.
Man.
I think a couple of them died as children.
It would be hard to have children with someone who's in Canada, if you were at home.
Yes. I don't know if that's the reason. As a result of this situation, Leith Hall passed to Sebastian's eldest nephew.
Okay.
Charles Edward Norman Leith-Hay.
Charles Edward Norman Leith-Hay. Yes.
Charles.
Chassa.
Charles. Now, Charles was the 3rd son of a 3rd son.
Ooh, does that make him not magical? It's not the 7th. Holy?
Oh, I guess Charles was the 3rd child of a 3rd son. Because he had 2 older sisters.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So he wasn't the 3rd son, he was the 3rd child.
I was about to say, if he's not a son or a daughter, what is he?
No,
He's just a child.
No. Charles was non-binary. No, he wasn't. He absolutely wasn't. He was the 3rd child.
Yes.
Of a 3rd son. So really, he was never supposed to inherit Leith Hall.
No, he kind of lucked out, I suppose.
Sebastian's next brother had no children. So it fell to the brother after that.
Oh, yes,
who had Charles.
I see, I'm with you.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
And yeah, his sisters obviously weren't getting the hall, because how would they cope with a home?
Well, how could they rule it without a penis?
God.
Ugh.
How would they find their way around? Now, this will likely come as a bit of a surprise, but Charles was actually born in Queensland, Australia.
Okay. That does come as a surprise.
Weren't expecting that.
Nope.
Sebastian's younger brother, James, who was Charles's father, had travelled out to Australia along with a couple of his other brothers. They had all gone out together. Because if you could hack it, there were good lives and good fortune to be made in Australia at this time.
It wasn't just a lad's trip.
I mean, it does kind of have that vibe. But they were moving out there permanently. Because Europeans were settling there in droves and stealing land from the native people.
Yep.
Again.
Yes, there's a lot of money to be made because there's a lot of stuff you can just take for free, apparently.
Yes, there's a lot of money to be made because you can just steal stuff.
Yes, because theft is okay.
One of Charles's uncles was actually killed by natives after landing in Australia. And this happened to him. Well, yeah, I mean, you can't blame them.
No.
But this happened after he survived a shipwreck.
Oh, wow.
So his luck truly ran out.
Oh.
He did have some.
Ooh.
But once again, I feel like this is a situation where people should have read the room and recognised where they weren't wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, like I'm sure they would have had a fine life back in Scotland without leaving.
Well, yeah. Without taking things that don't belong to them.
They could have just gone to Australia, hung out for a few weeks, had some beers, thrown a shrimp on the barbie, gone home, and then been all like, Brisbane there, done that.
Did you say all of that just so you could say Brisbane there and done that?
No.
Wow.
Sometimes you just have to set up your own joke.
I wonder if you could... This is such a tangent. I wonder if you could print that on a t-shirt and sell it to tourists in Brisbane from here as like a little side racket.
So that's a business idea right there.
Brisbane there. Called it. All the royalties are mine now.
Yep.
I'm not sure exactly when Charles returned to Scotland from Australia.
Once he'd Brisbane there, done that.
Because he was born there. I don't know if he came back when Sebastian died in 1900 to get the hall, or if he had moved back before then. I'm not sure. He married an Irish woman called Henrietta O'Neill, and they also seemed to have a genuinely loving relationship.
Oh, that's nice.
They cared about each other a great deal. And I had pretty good sources for the earlier Leiths and Leith-Hays, but there isn't much online about Charles and Henrietta. Unfortunately, a lot of the sources about them defer to the family book, which was a book written about the Leith-Hay family, but it's at Leith Hall.
Oh.
So I can't access it. So I don't have much about them personally. I don't know if it's because they were so recent.
Oh, maybe.
Sort of out of respect for them.
Oh, books at Leith Hall. Do you know what really surprised me of all the books we saw? Because there's lots of books on display.
What?
There was actually a Who's Who.
Oh, yeah. It's from the 30s, I think.
Yeah, it was like a Who's Who of the 1930s. I think it was the book of Who's Who. I didn't know that was an actual book.
Yeah.
That blew
I'm
my
pretty
mind.
sure it was yearly.
Yeah, I didn't know there's like an actual book of...
Yeah, that's where the phrase comes from.
Yeah,
The who's who of high society.
I had no idea.
And you would want to be in that book, because
would.
then you were somebody.
Yeah, mental.
Oh, I didn't realise you didn't know that was a real thing.
No, that was I thought it was just a saying. I never really thought about where it came from.
I thought you pointed it out to me because of like the saying and knowing what it was.
No, it was just brand new to me, because that was on a table, and it was beside something about like all the lordships.
It was a book that contained the peerage.
That was it.
And the baronetcies and everything, all the titles and title holders.
2 books I typically have on my side table also. Carry on.
During his time at Leith Hall, Charles was the one who added the turrets. So there's circular turrets on the corners of Leith Hall. He had them built.
a flair for the dramatic.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Big time. But I think the end goal was to make it look more like a French chateau.
That's what the guide said, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rather than the tower house. And it does give it more of a French appearance. It does look more European because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Charles and Henrietta seem to have been well liked by the tenants of their estate. They seem to have a genuine, nice relationship with the people who lived there. And they had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. But both of their daughters seem to have died soon after they were born. And they died in infancy.
Always sad.
During the First World War, when was the First World War, Kieran?
1913 to 1918.
1914 to 1918. We were this close.
Panicked, took a shot.
They allowed Leith Hall to be used as a convalescence hospital.
Yes, they did.
For soldiers, which was run by the Red Cross. So people who were recovering from battle, who had wounds, were taken to Leith Hall to recuperate.
I think that's nice. I think that's
better.
What Glamis Castle did as well.
Yes.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was quite common because they had the space.
Yeah.
And it was widely considered to be healthy to be out in the open air. For a variety of things, like illness, not just wounds. I think one of the earliest treatments for, was it TB?
Yes.
Was going out into the country and getting clean air. So, manor houses and things of that type were very popular among the sick. But a nice thing to do. Apparently Leith Hall housed over 500 recovering soldiers.
Wow.
During its time as a hospital.
Jeez, oh.
Big deal.
Yeah.
Helped a lot of people.
Good. That's a lot nicer than being a slave trader.
Yeah. Yeah, a better way to use your power.
Yep.
I would say. I don't think that's a hot take. I think we can all agree on that one.
Yep, I think. Yeah.
If we don't agree, you shouldn't be here.
You can get out.
Now, I don't know if you noticed, but it's been a little while since Laird of Leith Hall had a son to pass it all on to with no drama.
This is true.
It's been passing to nephews and all kinds of people.
Everybody else.
Charles and Henrietta's son, who was also called Charles, was the first direct son and heir for over 130 years.
Wow.
It'd been a long time. But tragedy struck in 1939.
I was going to say, oh man, it's so sad it took that long. It's sad that it happened then as well, apparently.
Yeah. Charles Sr. died in May 1939, so just before the outbreak of World War II, which made his young son Laird of Leith Hall.
Yep.
And left Henrietta absolutely heartbroken, because she loved Charles very much.
Yes.
World War II breaks out across Europe in 1939, like I just said, and the young Charles Jr., joined up, like many young men did.
Yeah.
It was an object of pride for a lot of young men at the time. I'd almost assume it would be expected of him, because so many of his family had been in the army.
Well, it's a long legacy of army people.
But in September 1939, so just at the outbreak of war, Charles Jr. was travelling on a motorbike to where his regiment was stationed in Otterburn, Northumberland, when he crashed. So he wasn't at war, he was still at home.
I remember this story.
And it's a bit confusing since no one really knows where he was going or why he was where they found him. It wasn't clear. They seem to think he was returning to base, but they don't know. But it seems like his jacket got caught in the wheel of the motorbike and he lost control, crashed into a wall, and it killed him. Although I think he may have died a few days later.
Horrendous.
Yes, which meant Henrietta lost her husband and her only son within 4 months of each other. And Charles was only 21. Very sad.
That's a lot to try and go through the rest of your life with.
Yep. Charles Jr., I don't mean that as disrespectful, it's just hard to differentiate when they're both Charles. He was the last Laird of Leith Hall.
Wow.
Because after the war, in 1945, Henrietta actually gave Leith Hall and all of the antiques and paintings and everything in it to the National Trust for Scotland.
A wonderful organisation.
Yes, fantastic. She continued to live there until she died in 1965. So she kept an apartment for herself. She still stayed at home. but the National Trust took over maintenance and care of the hall.
Wow.
And the hall has been in the Trust's hands ever since. So nearly 100 years.
That's a long time, actually, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And that's us all caught up on the history of Leith Hall.
If I know anything about the Generally Spooky podcast, which is questionable at best, I know it's time for the spooky portion.
Yes, here come the spooks.
Here come the spooks. Do-do-do-do. This isn't a ghost, it's just a tissue. So, what's spooking?
Leith Hall actually has a pretty impressive repertoire of ghostly goings-on.
Good.
And we got to visit it for ourselves.
We did.
And I can attest to its spooky repertoire.
I cannot. Obviously.
That's to be expected, really.
Yeah. Didn't get much vibes. Didn't see any ghosts.
Way back in the 1960s, a woman called Elizabeth Bird actually rented out the entire east wing of Leith Hall. Now, you don't know much about the spooky side of things, do you, Kieran? I haven't told you much.
No, just what we asked the guide while we were there to tell us any spooky goings on.
Well, I think these kind of things you don't know too much about.
No.
Yes, Elizabeth Bird, she rented out the entire east wing of Leith Hall. And she stayed there with her husband because she was writing books about ghosts in Scotland.
Very nice.
She had heard that there were ghosts at Leith Hall. She wanted to experience it for herself.
That's badass.
Right?
Oh, I'm just going to rent out the wing of this castle while I work on my novel.
She was an American.
While I work on my novel.
I said American, not a cartoon.
Was that better?
No. Now, the East Wing is one of the oldest parts of the hall. I believe it's the section that was built by John Leith III. And I think it's the part we visited that has the bedrooms in it.
Okay.
But I can't be completely sure because I've lost my bearings with which bit is which.
It's quite disorientating when you're on the inside.
Yeah. Elizabeth was a writer, like I said, and I want to say that I've mentioned her on the podcast before, but I look back through my research and things and I cannot find where I talked about her. She wrote a novel, like a fictional novel about Mary Queen of Scots. So it's maybe in that episode, but I cannot remember.
No idea.
Because she loved Scotland. She spent a huge chunk of her life living here. 9 of the 13 books she wrote were written while she was in Scotland.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
She really became attached to the country. I think she looked at her ancestry and she said she was related to somebody Scottish.
Somebody or other.
Scottish, I can't remember.
Don't know. I've already forgotten her name.
Elizabeth Bird.
Bird.
She wrote about her experiences at Leith Hall in 2 of her books. One was called The Ghosts in My Life, and the other was called A Strange and Seeing Time. I tried to get copies, but they seemed quite rare and quite expensive. So I passed on that.
Fair play.
Because I can't afford that. But Elizabeth had a hell of a time at Leith Hall.
Oh, yeah?
She saw a man with a big, dirty bandage over his head that covered his eyes. And she saw this man, he was moaning at her. He was wearing dark green trousers. He had a dark beard. And he was carrying a weapon.
Was she perhaps eating some funny mushrooms when she saw this?
No, I don't think so. She saw this man in her bedroom. And she said that he looked so real that she was really scared that someone had broken in to the castle and into her room.
Terrifying.
Like a real person, which is terrifying. She was shouting and screaming at him to go away and leave her alone. He was a real threat to her. She was scared. And then he just disappeared.
What? Spooky.
And she couldn't sleep in that room anymore. She had to start sleeping in a different bedroom in the house because she was too shaken up.
I mean, that should be enough of that, wouldn't it? Like, yeah, that's plenty.
I couldn't handle that.
We're just going to close that door and we're going to sleep in here with the light on.
I'm fairly convinced by that because of her believing that it's a person. And the threat that someone's broken in and someone's in my room and he's going to attack me. Rather than he's a ghost and he had chains and, you know?
Yeah, rather than going into like a Charles Dickens Christmas Carol situation.
Because I would fully believe, like, that's what an encounter would be like. You would believe it's a person.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair enough. I'm always sceptical of stuff that happens while you're sleeping because of sleep paralysis. She wasn't sleeping. Or in her room.
She was just in her room. She wasn't in her bed.
That's more spooky.
She was just in her bedroom at the time.
Oh my god.
Now, it's believed that Elizabeth saw the ghost of John Leith III.
That's what I wondered when you said bandage around the head.
Yes, he was shot in the head. So people believe that that's who she saw.
And he'd be going, ah, fuck.
Would he be able to speak? Would he have been shot in the head?
Don't know. Depends where, I suppose.
I was listening to an episode of BuzzFeed Unsolved, and I can't remember which story. It might have been the Texarkana Phantom Killer. But there was a woman who was attacked by the Phantom Killer, and he shot her, and he shot her fully in the face.
Ooh.
She should have died, but she had enough presence of mind that she stayed conscious after this. The bullet was under her tongue.
Oh.
And she managed to run to her neighbour's house and got medical attention and survived.
That's quite something.
Like, she got the job done. She got out of there and lived.
Damn, that's like Sherlock Holmes level awareness.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So I say, like, oh, do you think you'd be able to talk? But she got shit done.
Maybe, yeah. Mental.
Now, John Leith III wasn't the only spectre that Elizabeth saw at the hall. She quite often heard footsteps coming from floors of the house where no one else was at the time. And she described them as sounding like a child or a puppy shuffling or scampering along the floor.
Interesting.
Do you know how badly I want to believe that is Tipo just having a grand old time?
Yeah. Chasing ghost butterflies.
I want it so bad.
Yeah. Made me wonder if it's a big rat.
Oh. But yeah, she heard footsteps that she couldn't explain.
Well, there you go. Do you think it would be more compelling if you heard footsteps, but it was a really, like, weird rhythm, like... People
are doing the conga upstairs again.
Yeah, because, like, oh, look at footsteps. Like, oh, well, something could just, like, tap in a rhythm, but what would do the conga rhythm, you know?
Or what if you had a ghost that had a wooden leg?
Oh, that'd be interesting.
And you knew this person had a wooden leg in their life, and then you heard a ghost that had a wooden leg.
That's got to be a thing people have heard.
Surely that's got to be a thing.
If not, it's an episode of Scooby-Doo for
And the pirate ghost.
Spooky-Doo, sorry.
Spooky-Doo. Can't believe I said that. Elizabeth also talked about what she described as poltergeist activity.
Ooh.
So, doors slamming, bottles flying around. She talked about a bottle of sherry that was thrown from a side of the room off a table. Lamps falling over and crashing to the ground, which you wouldn't want, because remember, these are antiques.
Some very old lamps.
So, you're not being careless.
I imagine the deposit you pay is quite hefty if you go and stay.
Mm-hmm. She even heard the sounds of people having a party, like a rager, in the house when no one else was there.
That'd be weird.
I mean, would it be weird or would it be sad? Because the ghosts are having a party without you in your home.
Oh.
I would be upset.
Maybe that was Sandy having a party.
Maybe, but there'd be no one else in the house and she would hear the sounds of a big party happening. That would really unsettle me because there's no mistaking that.
Yeah.
Like, I get with the footsteps, like it could just be a door that's caught in like a through draft.
Yep.
And it's just like tapping against the frame in the rhythm of footsteps. Totally believe that could be a thing.
But a full-on party.
You know the sound of people having a good time.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that sound. I don't see any way you would confuse that with something else.
Yeah.
And Leith Hall is kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, there's not much around it at all.
There's no other buildings around it where a different party could be happening. I thought it was strange.
That is very strange. I just can't imagine it because I don't think I would hear it.
Fair.
Even if we were both there and you heard it, I don't think I'd hear it.
You just shake your head at me.
Yeah, but could you hear that? No. What?
Say no before you even know what it is. Guests that Elizabeth invited to the hall to come and stay, because she rented out 14 rooms, so it's quite a lot of space. Even they were picking up on the same things that Elizabeth had seen and felt when she was on her own. I don't know how much they knew before coming to the hall.
Yeah, how much got suggested to them.
If you were going to be scientific, it would have to be nothing.
Yep.
But I don't know how much they knew. But they were picking up on the same things. They spoke about apparitions appearing in their bedrooms, just the same as Elizabeth had.
Full on.
But their stories included a Victorian woman, who a lot of people have attributed to Henrietta.
Uh-huh.
No, Henrietta was after.
Mary? There was Mary's.
I think Christina Hamilton was Sebastian's wife.
Harriet?
And they were there in the mid-1800s to 1900s, so I think it must be her. Harriet was earlier. She was John Leith III's wife.
I'm just throwing out names.
I'm just saying the wrong thing. I wanted to correct it. A Victorian woman, and they also reported seeing and hearing the ghosts of children playing in one of the bedrooms.
Ghost children are always creepy.
Very creepy. And just inherently sad.
Yes. And when there were so many lost children, it's just a bit sad, isn't it?
But these are playing children.
Well, that's nicer.
Instead of sad children.
Like, you don't want to see a bandage around the head of a child who's groaning in pain.
No. Playing children.
Much
that's
nicer.
Ideal scenario, really.
Doing the conga, perhaps.
I mean, it's as good as it's going to get. Ghost children. Her guests talked a lot about the master bedroom, which I think is the Leith bedroom, with the big wooden bed. Because they speak specifically about really not liking the bed. They felt that it had a really weird feeling. They didn't like being in there with it. They had a really weird feeling the whole time they were in that room. And I think it's the same bed that's in there now.
Interesting.
And I'm bearing in mind too that when we were on the tour, we didn't get taken into every room. So they may be talking about rooms we haven't seen. I'm not sure.
Possibly.
Yeah, Elizabeth's guests would be really scared of walking past this bed if they had to use the bathroom in the night. They didn't like it at all.
Creepy. Mm-hmm. It would be a creepy place to be in at night by yourself.
I didn't like it in the daytime. I've left us room to talk about how we got on at Leith Hall, but...
Won't take me long.
You're so rude to me. Yeah, I totally get it. I found it thoroughly creepy. You did. But I think the big wooden bed that's there was Henrietta's bed.
A big 4-poster bed.
Mm-hmm, it's massive. I think that's what the guide said. I think she said it was hers. There's also a painting in the drawing room, which I think is the last room that we were in on the tour. And this painting is called The Flight into Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
Big painting. But Elizabeth had issues with this painting. Because whenever she looked at it, she swore up and down she could see a large bearded man looking back at her from the painting.
That's weird.
And no one else could see him whenever she would see him.
That's a very unusual ghost encounter. I don't think we've had one like that before.
No, that he was just there. She could see him. No one else could see him.
Weird. Mm-hmm. Somewhat spooky.
Other people have reported seeing children, like I said. Some people have reported seeing 2 little girls playing in the Leith bedroom. People have also reported seeing a young man in the grounds and in the hall in a military uniform, just wandering around, and he looks very mournful. Sound like anyone we know?
It could be quite a few of them, really.
Well, a lot of people think that it's Charles Leith-Hay, who was the last laird. Because he died young, he died in military service, and a lot of people think that that's him made his way home.
Interesting.
They just see him, I think from what I can see, it's usually at a distance they see him, and he's just wandering around.
The guy who was on the motorbike? Mm-hmm. Oh. When you said military uniform, I had the kind of red jacket in my head.
No, I think it's the World War I, the more like khaki-coloured uniform.
Got you.
That people have seen.
Could be.
And he looks very real. They just see a man wandering around in this uniform that doesn't belong, and then he's gone.
Spooky. Mm-hmm. When I asked our guide about any ghost encounters she'd had, I don't know if you have this in your notes, but I'm just going to bring it up now.
No, I was going to let you say.
Oh. Well, she said that there was a woman who came on the tour not long ago to find ghosts, and because she thought it might be haunted, and she thought it was thoroughly spooky, so she took her parents and came again another time, and she had an app on her phone apparently that was supposed to like sense movement and make little stick figures of people if there was movement.
Well, yeah, it picks up, from what I've seen people use it before, it picks up points of movement when you point the camera, and it connects the points of movement with lines.
Yep.
So if it picks up all these movements like a head, a torso, legs, it'll highlight them.
Yeah.
And then you might see a figure because there's these points of movement that you can't see.
So she did it in one of the bedrooms where there's thought to be 2 ghost children and 2 stick figures appeared. But it was kind of weird because they were slightly sunken into the floor, and apparently the old floor used to be lower than the current floor that was there, which made me go, ooh.
It was very creepy.
Sounded very creepy.
A weird detail that it was half of their figures.
Yeah.
When I doubt this woman knew that there was an old floor.
No, but I know nothing about this app. Seems
I know nothing
silly.
about it. I've just seen what it looks like. I don't know if I believe in it, but it was very creepy.
Yeah, pretty weird.
Lots of visitors to the hall have talked about a strange grey mist on the spiral staircase in the middle of the building.
That's quite unusual. An inside mist.
Inside mist, and it makes people feel uneasy. They feel trapped, like they can't go through it. It's solid. And some people have even felt sick.
Wow.
Around this mist.
Because I thought you were going to say like a mist outside.
Nope, this is on the staircase.
Ooh.
As if something is there. Well, there are supposedly ghosts in the grounds too.
Ooh.
So we talked about the ghost supposedly of Charles Leith-Hay.
Yep.
There's a green lady that haunts a boating pond, apparently. Now, from what I could see, the article said this is reported to be Mary. There were lots of Marys, so I don't know which Mary they were talking about. Because there's Mary who was John III's mother, and there was Mary who married John III's son, so Sandy's wife, she was called Mary. And there's Mary who married Andrew Leith-Hay, who didn't get to be governor of Bermuda. And I really wish I had a different way of differentiating them other than their husbands and fathers and sons, but there's no information about these women because they're women.
Ugh.
It's stupid. That's 3 different Marys.
Yeah, it seems like cold reading. He's just hedging his bet.
Maybe.
So when someone says, oh, could it be this Mary? Like, yes, it could be that Mary. I wonder if the boating pond is what the other guy called his lock.
Yeah, I wondered about that. I don't know.
I've got a lock installed. You mean the pond? It's a lock.
This is Scotland. It's a lock. People have reported hearing screaming from the grounds that they attribute to her. And people have talked about a really horrible smell in some of the rooms that they also think is her.
Well, that's weird.
It was described as a really putrid smell.
Ooh.
So, like, rotten.
Demons.
I only saw in one place, but apparently there's an old cemetery on the grounds of Leith Hall.
Oh, yeah?
Which I didn't realise, we didn't see.
Nope.
From what I read, it's quite old and it hasn't been used in a long time, since the later members of the Leith-Hay family were buried in nearby... Or how do you pronounce it? Kennethmont, I think.
Okay.
That's how you pronounce it. They were buried there, rather than the cemetery. But this led me to a piece of Scottish folklore that I'd never heard before.
Oh, yeah?
If you would like to hear it, you will need to join us for the blether. Because I'm going to talk about it there.
Look at that upsell.
It's not upsell, it's interesting. We don't have to upsell anything, it's just cool. Now, there have been several modern attempts to spot and document the ghosts of Leith Hall. Aside from us.
I know where this is going.
A reporter from the Daily Record, not my favourite newspaper,
No.
stayed in the hall overnight for an article, and she felt really strange. She felt cold spots. She was really overwhelmed with a weird smell in the dining room that she couldn't explain. She said it felt suffocating. A light went out in one of the chandeliers when she was in the music room. And she talked about the bad presence around the bed.
Oh, yeah?
Which I'm assuming is the big wooden bed. But she also reported stories from other people who had slept at Leith Hall who had nightmares of someone bending over them while they slept.
Ugh.
And feeling as if they were being smothered.
Oh.
Which is really creepy.
That is really creepy.
Now, I know that you don't give credence to stories from sleeping. And
Yep. Still creepy, though.
well, that sounds like sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
From what I understand, that's what it's like.
I think so.
But very creepy.
Very creepy, regardless.
Even if it's sleep paralysis, very creepy.
Very creepy.
An author called Alana Knight stayed in this room with the big bed and experienced this for herself. She and her husband both felt as if they were being smothered in the night and had the feeling that someone was in the room with them. They heard like crystal glasses moving on their own, like clinking together. And she thought she heard footsteps with the rustling of a dress, like a dress moving across the floor. which is really creepy.
It is really creepy.
Hearing all that movement and you can't see it.
I mean, it becomes quite strange if there's a regular occurrence of sleep paralysis in the same place.
It seems to be. This is someone who... And it was her and her husband who both had it.
Yeah, like, even if it is sleep paralysis.
But sleep paralysis wouldn't happen to two people at the same time.
No.
In 2006, a paranormal investigation group visited the hall. And this all sounded pretty fun because you could buy tickets for their event.
Oh, yeah?
They held a workshop where they trained you up in all of their equipment. So you could take your own equipment and go ghost hunting with them.
I mean, that's pretty fun.
Which I just thought was really cool.
I would go and do that.
That you could join in and do the thing. I'm pretty sure they had, like, snacks and they just made a good time of it, which is my idea of fun.
Yeah, that sounds like a good time. I like that.
But yeah, I felt really weird at Leith Hall on our own visit. I can't explain it. I did not like being there.
No, pretty much from as soon as we went inside.
Didn't like it. I felt really uneasy, really jumpy. Like, you would start speaking to me and I would jump.
Yeah.
I was really tense. I smelled cigar smoke in one of the bedrooms.
You did?
Which really freaked me out. It's a place where lots of other people have smelled cigar smoke, and I think they think that's John Leith III. I can't remember what the guide said.
It was one of the John's bedrooms, and he used to smoke cigars.
And I got a really strong smell of it, and I didn't put it together initially because I got the smell, and you know where you go inside and you just kind of assume it's the smell of the room? So I went in and it immediately made me think of my uncle, who used to smoke cigars. So I went into the room and I went, oh, that smells like my uncle. And it took me a second before I put that together and went, oh, fuck, that's cigar smoke.
Oh, my God.
I didn't make the connection straight away. It was really strange.
Yeah. It was interesting because it happened that way round.
Yeah, I didn't... I went in and I got the smell and it reminded me of him.
Yeah.
Because he used to smoke cigars.
It's very close feeling.
Yes.
It's very... You can kind of tell it's been added onto multiple times because it feels a very narrow, like, area of ground to have so much built onto it. And
a lot of it's quite dark.
Yeah, and it's not really dark and the windows aren't very big.
Well, there's quite a lot of corridors that have, like, no windows.
Yeah. And a lot of, like, the rooms are really cold because the windows aren't very big and a lot of them have the blinds pulled down to preserve the paintings and stuff.
So you have to be careful with light.
Yeah.
When it comes to art.
We walked down one of the halls and I turned to you and went, oh, cold spot, must be a ghost.
Yeah, you freaked me out because, oh yeah, it's really cold down here. And I was like, what?
What do you mean?
You can't say things like that or I'll freak out.
But it was just at the back, away from the sun, with no windows.
Well, that I totally accept because the sun doesn't reach these corridors.
No.
So they're going to be cold.
And there's no heating.
Because they'll have to keep it temperature controlled for a lot of it, I would imagine.
That as well. I think there's thermometers in a few different rooms.
That'll be why. It's like museums. You have to watch the temperature because if it's too hot or too cold, it'll ruin artifacts and paintings and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I really did not like being there.
Nope.
Like a lot of the things in the grounds, I knew were there and I didn't want to look at any of them. When we left the hall, I wanted to leave.
Yeah, you wanted to get the hell out of Dodge.
I didn't want to be there. Which, totally not like me, because museums, castles, I'm all for it.
Absolutely.
I'll be there all day. I would have for Codder the other week.
Yep.
But no, I wanted to leave.
Yeah, it wasn't nearly as kind of warm and friendly as Codder feels.
But our guide was lovely.
Oh, yeah. Well, the guide was lovely and it's well worth a visit.
Absolutely nothing to do with the staff at all. They were really nice.
If we were going to do a ghost hunt, I would want to do it there.
Oh, see, I don't want to go back. I do not want to go back. It gives me a weird feeling thinking about being there, thinking how I felt being there, and going back. I absolutely don't want to. But now for Kieran's favourite part of the episode.
Oh, I knew it was coming.
On October 28th, 2003.
Good day,
my 10th birthday. The episode of Most Haunted aired in which they visited Leith Hall.
Yes, it did.
And we watched it.
It's on Amazon Prime,
yes.
In the UK at least.
Kind of free because there's ads, which I resent.
Yeah, there didn't used to be. Now they just put ads on it and saying like, oh, it's free though.
So we're going to finish out the episode talking about their episode.
Oh,
because it's Kieran's favourite show.
Crock of shite it was.
It is season 3, episode 4. Or season 4, episode 3. I can't remember which way around.
Them running around the dark going like, oh my god, these rooms are different temperatures. There must be ghosts. Oh look, there's dust on the camera. It's an orb. That's obviously a ghost. And then Derek Acora just reading plaques and then saying he can be a psychic about God fucking most haunted.
Kieran has an intense dislike for Derek Acora.
Yes, because he's a liar.
That's putting it mildly.
Yes, this son of a beach.
What I will say is they talk a lot in the episode about the hanging tree that's on the grounds of the hall. I didn't want to talk about it in this episode because I don't know enough. Mm-hmm. I don't know enough of the history. I couldn't find anything official that talked about this tree. I'm not saying it wasn't, but they talk about it a lot in the episode. We didn't see it when we were there.
Yeah, we missed it.
It's been closed off. There were lots of hedges where the tree supposedly is, so I don't know if they just don't want people looking at it or if they've changed the gardens. But something I didn't see for myself and I can't find the history of, I just don't want to speculate because I don't know. Because I think even the plaque by the tree says traditionally this would have been. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there are records existing of hangings happening there.
Not sure at all.
So, I don't want to talk about things I don't know are true.
Yeah. Unlike Most Haunted, who will just say anything, apparently. Derek Acora is the psychic, by the way, if you've not seen the show.
Actually, he's the spiritualist medium, Kieran.
Oh, I'm sorry. He goes in, apparently knowing nothing about it beforehand, and then gets all this information from the beyond about it and the various ghosts in the history. But this one was the worst because, well, obviously he either researches it beforehand or he just reads the plaques as they go around.
There are a lot of plaques in the house.
Like, whenever he gets things correct, it's somewhere they go that has a plaque.
Well, he talked in this episode about using the hall as a Red Cross hospital.
Yep.
With all of this information that everyone was surprised by. But when you walk in the front door, there is a plaque on the wall.
First thing you see.
It's literally the first thing you see. We saw it for ourselves.
Yep.
There's a plaque that says... This was a Red Cross hospital given by Charles Leith-Hay, all that stuff.
Yeah. But it was just him speculating about things, and then the historian being like, oh, well, that could have happened, because these things could have happened. And they were just egging each other on in this big circle of conjecture.
There were lots of inaccuracies, even from my amateur level research.
Yeah, in the actual history, not just in what he was intuiting from the beyond.
But then I felt very smug because they gave 4 minutes of history at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, that was...
And I knew I was sitting on all of my script. I'm like, haha, it's going to be longer than 4 minutes.
Oh, it's just so... Oh, there's a part where Derek Acora is standing on the big stairwell at the main hall being like, yeah, I really feel like people would have walked up here. I'm like, oh, wow, that's the most ingenious thing I've ever heard. People in the past used this staircase. Did they use it to reach the higher levels, perhaps?
He's not your favourite person, is he?
No.
It's him and the orbs.
Him, the orbs, and then Helen Duncan. We'll just throw her in again, shall we? From our witchcraft series.
Well, she definitely wasn't in the episode.
No, she's not in the episode. Just other spiritualist mediums, her talking pish.
This is why I wanted to talk about the episode, at least briefly, here, because it's funny to me.
Oh, because we watch it and it gives me rage.
That's why I watch it.
But I can't look away. Just, if I want to get really raged out, if I'm feeling tired, I watch some Most Haunted and get all raged up, and then I can go and do something else with my day.
That's what he does before the gym.
It's my pre-workout.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, that's probably enough of me ranting about Derek Acora.
You don't want to continue?
No, I think that about sums it up, I think. The charlatan.
Well, that is the long storied history of Leith Hall.
That was from the audience.
That was Odin. He's actually been here the whole time.
The whole time. Oh, there's another Most Haunted where there was a dog in the whatever castle building they were in.
A real dog that they had with them.
Yeah, like the owners had a dog. And then it was on the floor above. And they heard something run across a room. And they're like, what could that have been? Because the last time we saw the dog, he was lying down. I was like, oh wow, the dog couldn't have just gotten up while you weren't there. That could never happen. Oh. Pissed off now.
You really hate it. Like, really, really hate it.
Thank you for sharing the story of Leith Hall with us.
No, you're not distracted anymore. I'm going to have to deal with you for the rest of the night now. I have to calm you down.
I'm going to have to rage my way through the blether.
Thank you so much for listening.
I hope you enjoyed that. It was a bit sad, but it was very interesting.
Yes. But I don't like skipping the sad bits, because I think the sad bits are important.
They are. And it's a major part of the history.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to include it.
Yeah, I think it's easy. Speaking from experience as a Scottish person, I think it's very easy to take the easy way out.
Yes.
And assume that, no, Scottish people never did that. But they were just as culpable in colonialism as English people. And
yes.
Later American people. So I think it's important to confront.
I think so too.
And certainly the more people who know about it, the better.
Yes.
Really.
Couldn't agree more.
So I would go and look at the articles that have been put up on the National Trust website. They're very informative. The project is great. The Facing Our Past project. Highly recommend you look into it. That would be my advice, because they're doing it a lot better than I am.
And thank you to the National Trust.
Yes.
For the support. Thank you to the Spark Company.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you to Bird and Blend, who we didn't have an advert for at the start, but I'm going to thank them anyway.
But we love you anyway.
Yeah, we do. And thank you to all our Patreon supporters. We're going to come and join the Spookmaster Generals for our blether.
Yes. And thank you to you, whoever is listening right now.
Yes.
We appreciate you.
We do.
If you haven't already, please consider leaving us a review, because it helps.
Yeah.
With stuff.
Make sure you review the right podcast.
I was just about to say that. Go and leave Haunted UK a great review on our behalf. Steve would love it.
And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.